Hello, dear friends. We are back with yet another episode of Entrepreneur Look at Me. Can I move my face over here to make it look like I'm looking at you? I can't. I am here to share with you SaaS speedrun attempt. I do think I have the world record with AI outreach. And you can see that I've actually started working on making my company website look less awful as well. And this was done in Claude code for mere minutes. Oh, look at that. We got a cool floating 3D logo thing. Maybe that appeals to somebody. Speaking of appealing, not the world's best UI. Probably the most unattractive color scheme I've ever seen, some have said. An unprofessional logo in a weak presentation, some have said. But the utility and the functionality is unmatched because in 10 hours, I have taken an innate inflow that we've been using internally, fraught with endless pain and suffering, simply to be able to update Google Sheets. Believe it or not, that is the weakest point in the innate inflow, and transformed it into a SaaS that you can buy to get all the same benefits that I already do. Yes, the UI sucks, but we can enter company name, the LinkedIn profile of the client, the description of what the company does, or we make a little perplexity call to figure out what your company does based on the website or even what I pull from your LinkedIn. The value proposition that you want to make for this specific outreach campaign, the description of the person that you hope to be targeting. This is important for qualification. And the pain points, which we are going to mention in the intro message hooks. Additionally, who are we signing off as? Let's say it's Jeremy. Am I actually going to show you about this because I have to fill out all this information? Probably not going to do it right now. Later on, we're going to make something just for AI outreach, and it's going to be very special. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be wonderful, and it's going to show you exactly how personalized these messages are. And then your own LinkedIn profile page, as well as what you think that you would be sending, if you would send anything, and anything else that you want to throw in there. I will use the AI to semantically check for whether or not somebody is a hard to target industry, for example. And all you do is upload a CSV with LinkedIn. Historically, we have had to use very specific formatting for our Excel sheets to be able to process these messages. Yeah, I will have a completed workflow to show you now that I think about it, because I have run some on this account. And we can make LinkedIn messages, email sequences, SMS messages, or even WhatsApp for you crazy Europeans out there. Any number of messages you want. Soon I'll have a deep research feature. I want to show you what I did and how I did it and how I managed to complete this in a mere 10 hours. I am guessing next time I'm going to make up, actually no, for this video I'm going to make up a random number to make it look like I timed myself. Let's see if I can expose any credentials on this YouTube video. Thankfully nobody watches. I took this entire flow as a JSON and I gave it to Claude code. With some other instructions, I said, hey, here's what we're going to do. We look up the clients. So our client is somebody who is going to be reaching out, in this case, using LinkedIn. And we ingest their LinkedIn profile with Rapid API. We parse those results. We send it to Google Sheets, blah, blah, blah. And then we figure out what the spreadsheet is. That's no longer a thing. And then we loop over every row in the spreadsheet that they uploaded. And when we do that, every single person with a LinkedIn profile, we pull the LinkedIn profile in, we parse that, we save it. We take the LinkedIn profile, we send it over here to Perplexity, and we say, hey, here's all the information about this dude. And now I want you to identify how the client's business proposition, the client's business, and even maybe their LinkedIn profile fits in with this person for a personal introduction. Then we validate whether or not the lead is actually correct. That's that point where I can put in something like, are they an author who has published a book in the last 3 months? Perplexity will look that up, and then Jim and I will validate, give me a yes, no, partner, or lead, as in referral partner. And then finally, we write the message itself with all of the above information. This is kind of complex. It's kind of a sophisticated thing. And your boy here has been cooking. Yeah, I am logged in. Spit out this. We are sponsored by Medigold, as always. Medigold, the brain booster. Over 33 servings, all completely valid. Or let's see here. Many of these are rejected. The list I was using as a test list are generally, it's a bad list. It's trying to find a very specific kind of retailer Oh, yeah, here we go. And most of the people on the list are not. So they actually should be disqualified. And that test succeeded. Let's look at our Airtable-like flow. And don't worry, I'm getting to the part where I tell you how to do this. So we have the justification. I'd like those little pop-ups and tooltips to be homogenized, maybe get rid of the border. These are very small complaints. All right. Hi, Mary. Notice we're both an author and a consultant. I respect the hustle of managing both sales sides with your book and the operations of coaching. As you grow, which areas are you focused on scaling? Kind of cool. She is focused on books to consumer, therefore fulfilling the definition, blah, 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 blah. It is very neat. This is an earlier run. I actually intended to skip all of these. And later runs, we no longer categorize them as errors. Right? They're just skipped. So this is a functioning SaaS with functioning Stripe and has a little credit system and all kinds of lovely things. I am on the local host, right? So I'm on localhost. It's actually the latest, greatest version, which does a lot of new stuff under the hood. 10 hours. How did we do it in 10 hours? And this is actually the reason I'm making the videos. I've had to tell my staff the same thing over and over again. And so we're going to document it in a video. Couple things. One, let us open up. Is it this? Is it document consolidation? It is. Okay, great. Don't care about that. Great, I can expose my prompts. Let's go over to Claude prompts and hide this. And I will boost up Claude. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to show you, so you're going to have to leave me. Sorry, put my giant face here in the middle. So I had the N8N workflow to begin with. And I exported that as JSON. I put that in the local file directory. And I said, write a PRD to remake this JSON in Next.js app using Supabase with Prisma and a SQLite database for development. The database, as always, especially if you've seen my previous videos and my inexperience with Supabase, that was probably the most frustrating, difficult part. Not that hard. The innovation that I have made, and I can see a lot more juice to be squeezed here, but I don't trust Claude Code. I am a developer. I've developed for 15 years. Having an agent just do a ton of stuff all on its own without supervision, Opus 4, whatever I am on the $200 plan, it is all Opus 4. It is insane to trust an AI agent to do anything unattended. And additionally, we're talking about context engineering all of a sudden, and I still don't know what that is. I consume probably 10 hours of videos like these every day, and I still don't know what context engineering is. But obviously, we want to feed as much context as possible. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of Claude 4 Sonnet with Playwright to be able to get the front-end errors and the server logs via just including the NPM terminal in context. But let's think about what kind of context Claude Code really has. It does some goofy stuff to be able to get the server-side logs. That's great. I did eventually figure out how to use Puppeteer. I didn't for this project. I wanted to use Playwright. I could not get to use Playwright. I did eventually get the Puppeteer MCP to work, but generally it's not going to have front-end logs. So it can't quite close the loop. And the other fascinating thing is even with the front-end and end-to-end testing or Puppeteer, MCP, whatever, screenshots are not worth what they were once worth, right? If I look at a screenshot and I see that there is no contrast, by the way, that's how we got the black and orange situation. Contrast. I see there's no contrast. The AI does not detect that there's a contrast problem. So we're not quite closing the loop. And specifically with Claude Code, if it doesn't have all of that possible information, how could I expect it to? If I were a developer operating blind, the world's smartest developer, I'm Opus 4, I'm Opus 17, right? And I can't see the site and what it looks like. And I can just kind of barely run a tail on the most recent server logs. I guess I can trigger actions via Puppeteer and then see the server-side tail. It would be rough. It'd be like trying to develop blind. Now, what did I trust it for initially? I trusted it for making documentation on the project. It does that copiously. We will scroll very briefly, just a little bit over here. Ooh, it's copious. You can see here it's writing documentation about how I asked it to consolidate the documentation. You can see how well that went. On other projects, I actually have done that successfully. But it's very hesitant, it's reluctant to actually delete files. You have to really plead and beg for it to delete files. So I trusted it to write documentation. I trusted it to write unit tests and end-to-end tests because, of course, I do. These are of very little consequence. They're not going to break the project. And that was pretty much it. For this project, I trusted it to make the PRD. Okay, PRD and a to-do list and maybe some supporting documentation. And I trusted it to do the greenfield installation, right? That is something that I have done for the past 6 months, mostly autonomously in Cursor. And then my job becomes a chimpanzee hitting enter, 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 continue, continue, continue. Do all the to-dos, right? And then I backfill and correct the errors after the fact because it's all about speed. It's all about efficiency. So generally on YouTube, by the way, and this is one of the main reasons I'm making the video, I do not see people treating this as aggressively as they could, right? If I'm trying to get an MVP, and by the way, this is fully functional. We've run thousands of rows through it and gotten thousands of AI messages that are qualitatively identical to what we were getting from the innate inflow that was breaking constantly. So it is a functional MVP. The only minimal part about it is that we do LinkedIn campaigns predominantly. Somebody else might want to do email. We do a single intro message. Somebody else might want to do a 5-message sequence. Those are the parts that remain to get hashed out. Broadly, it's ready for prime time. So I would hesitate to even call this an MVP. I would probably call this a fully functioning SaaS in 10 hours. So I trusted it to do the greenfield. I trusted documentation and testing. So what remains after that? Well, I discovered that within probably about 2 to 3 hours of mostly running multiple Claude code terminals, I'm going to talk about exactly how I do that, it managed to get a functioning recreation of the innate inflow without error, which is astounding. Beyond that, I say, I want to have a slice feature. That's something I've never had on LinkedIn or on innate. I want to be able to take from this row to that row. That'd be super useful, especially if I want to test. What if I was actually paying money for this, right? Yeah, I could edit my spreadsheet, but wouldn't it be convenient to just say process row 10 through 50, and I want to see what I get before I spend all the money to get the entire thing. I wanted to be able to match any spreadsheet. So I just find the column with the LinkedIn URLs and then take everything that was in the spreadsheet you uploaded and append my columns about lead validation and research and the AI messages themselves at the end. So that's a nice new feature. Each of these new features, I would have Claude Code specifically deploy. Well, one, I would have it write the to-do after a careful analysis of the code base and an analysis of the voluminous documentation. And then two, I'd run an executor agent. But the overall flow that I've discovered as this has gotten into a more robust project, so this is now, it's fully mature, it's stable, it's not that dissimilar from Nurturely in that way. It's a smaller project, but it's not that small. It is a mature code base that needs the respect and tender love and care. So how do I handle that with Claude Code? Because this is a huge lacuna in the current YouTube-based knowledge I've seen with Claude Code, and I've seen it all. So I run 3 simultaneous. I don't care about permissions, right? You can see that I am bypassing permissions right below my big face here. Inside the system, it hasn't found a reason to blackmail me or report me to PETA or whatever it's supposed to be doing. And agent number 1 is consolidate and update documentation. Take everything that you see in the documents, validate that it is currently correct in the code base, and then remove anything that is outdated. This is partly why it was giving me this document consolidation. It was really concerned that it was going to be removing a lot of things that it shouldn't be. But of course it should be, because it itself is also actively writing documentation pretty much the entire time that I am building the project. This includes the to-dos, stripping off the completed to-dos, and then finding gaps in areas for further elucidation, adding that perhaps to a documentation to-do. Beyond the documentation, I run end-to-end tests with Puppeteer to actively test the functionality and document bugs, and then add that to the to-do in real time, while documenting the results and potentially creating end-to-end tests to do exactly this in a repeatable manner. The third and final agent I'll run simultaneously is an executor, an execution expert within the to-do itself. So it is taking the active to-dos. Sometimes I might run several execution agents simultaneously in the early stages of the project and say, you're working on this phase or you're working on this end of it, and it won't interfere with this end of it. I don't want Git trees. I want to be able to see a comprehensive product developing right in front of me. And amazingly, this actually works, right? Amazingly, I did get the functionality. and we did manage to debug rather rapidly. So documentation to do. Documentation to do executor, and then end-to-end for active debugging and bug finding. Between these three things, running for about 4 or 5 hours, I ended up with the complete. I ended up with not only a recreation of my innate inflow, but fully functioning Stripe, credit system, user authentication, billing history, account page, everything that you need in a SaaS. I've gone to UI. It's an okay UI. Maybe we'll tweak that. Maybe we'll tweak it before we go live. Everyone hates the UI. That's fine. And it basically completed itself. It's astounding. I am not, I'm not comfortable with the idea of it, but it doesn't matter. I am fundamentally a business owner. I'm not a developer, and I need results. So the results are very, very strong with this workflow. The only element that is missing is an orchestrator on top to continuously rerun with correct prompts. Now, I want to talk a little bit too about Claudia and Super Claude. So I have used Claudia. I am on Windows. You can tell, right? I'm on Windows, and that sucks. And I can't use Claude Code within Windows, so I'm in WSL. That's fine. That's fine. Trying to bridge the GUI from WSL over to Windows is horrific. And Claudia has some kind of memory leak or WSL, or I forget what it is. It's like GVPU or some simple shit, right? Whatever is going on in WSL, when I run Claudia, which is a GUI-based Claude agent management platform, which works well and is actually a really nice thing in some capacities. The C program runs effortlessly, rinse and repeat certain prompts. I would get a memory leak and it would crash usually within 30 minutes to an hour, and the agents would continue to run. There is a community fix for bridging WSL. I'm concerned about doing that for a variety of reasons, mainly because I'm going to forget what I did whenever I hotkey code as a command and all this nonsense, and it doesn't seem plausible to me that would work. Maybe it would. That'd be great. I superseded Claudia with Super Claude. And by the way, how do you install Super Claude? You ask Claude Force on it, and Cursor to install Super Claude, including, by the way, the MCPs. And then, of course, we end up with the analyze, build, clean up, deploy, doc setup, etc. Now, I end up with some fairly sophisticated prompts. I think over here in Claude prompts, you'll see some of these. I am not an expert yet in what all these things mean, but I love 5 whys. I love Persona QA. I love builder and troubleshoot. I love the basic premise of here are some common boilerplate prompt injections that I need for this kind of agent. And I clearly have a documenting agent, I have an end-to-end agent, and I have a building agent. Those are all well defined within Super Claude. That's extremely powerful. It saves a lot of time. The main advantage that you gain from Claudia is not being able to see how much money you would have spent if you weren't on the $200 plan, which is amusing. I've been telling everyone, and my wife hates it. And everyone thinks I'm spending $5,000. No, I spent $200, $400, nobody cares. The real value of it is to be able to recycle prompts for specific agents. But that's what Super Claude does. It recycles prompts for specific agents across all projects, and probably in a way that's better than what I would have done. So the reality is Super Claude is probably the best in class right now. I don't want a window outside of Cursor because I want to be able to see the commit history. This one is actually a little bit of a funny one because I am accidentally on production branch. So I have to fix all the features I added before I push again to production. And then, by the way, the final 4 hours of the 10-hour deployment of this project was entirely in DevOps to get qualified to work with Supabase. My God. What do you mean Supabase is not in my stack? Yeah, it's in my stack. Oh, but it's a service. Oh, it's not a service. Oh, this, whatever. Absolutely amazing. We will do a world record any percent SaaS speed run. I already have 25 more ideas. We will launch this on AppSumo, I think, and we're going to launch nurturally on SaaSzilla. So we will also make a little comparison video about which is cooler. Goodbye. So long.